All right, we are back with Dave, Barry, and Max Hora. And in this segment, it'll be a little bit briefer than our last marathon one. We're going to talk about Patrick McGoohan's career post prisoner. And I don't know. Well, I've seen some of the stuff here in America. Did McGoohan do any television in Britain afterwards?
No, I don't think he did he?
Well, what happened after The Prisoner was, yeah, he actually went off to Switzerland to live for 2 or 3 years. I think around about 68, 69. He went to live in Switzerland until about 71, 72. And then he moved to the United States of America, where he lived for the rest of his life. So, no, he didn't really do much more British television. He did return sometimes to make the occasional thing in Britain. There was something where he played, I think, George Bernard Shaw for a Channel 4 program that was made, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago.
The Best of Friends, it was called, with Wendy Hiller and George Bernard Shaw. Extremely good.
Yeah, basically, he simply returned to Britain to make the occasional thing. And he actually very kindly, he did a television interview involving the society. He was interviewed in Birmingham in the UK in 1982. He gave a television interview to an interviewer called Mike Smith, where he talked about The Prisoner. And at that particular time, in 1982, when he did that interview, he was making a film called Jamaica Inn down in the southwest of England. He played the landlord of Jamaica Inn called Jos Merlin. So that was 1982. He came over to Britain for several weeks to do that.
What that must have been a remake, because I think there was a Jamaica Inn back in the 30s.
Yeah, Charles Lawton, wasn't it?
Yeah,
okay. That was the early one. Charles Lawton.
It is a piece of work that people return to from time to time.
Sort of like what is it? Beau Jest.
Oh yes.
So let's talk about his American. I know in America he did a handful of episodes on the Columbo detective series with Peter Falk. I think he did a number of Murder She Wrote with Angela Lansbury. Do you guys know any anecdotes on either of those recurring?
He continued to be able to be very choosy about his choice of material. After The Prisoner, as Max said, he first of all went to Switzerland because it was a very healthy climate there, and it helped his daughter. Then he went over, he met Jack Good, and he directed Catch My Soul for Jack Good in America. He became extremely friendly with Peter Falk. They were real buddies, and so he appeared in a number of Columbo episodes. I'll come back to those in a minute, but he was in a number of films, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, we mentioned Ice Station Zebra, where he went over to America, especially in 67. Yeah. But of course, in the 70s, late 70s, he did that series called Rafferty, where he plays Dr. Sidney Rafferty in a television series that was made in the late 70s in the United States, although that wasn't particularly popular. It wasn't particularly well received. But yeah, he did 5 or 6 Columbo episodes. By Dawn's Early Light, Identity Crisis, Agenda for Murder, Ashes to Ashes. He did several, and he usually directed them as well. He obviously got on very well with Peter Falk. And in a way, the characters that he plays in Columbo, in a way, it goes back to what I said earlier about he sometimes adapts the characters. Like in Danger Man, he adapted the character to suit him. In Agenda for Murder, one of the Columbo episodes, he makes a big point about that he detests being late. He always insists on everybody being on time. He says he detests lateness. And that is the real McGoohan, because the real McGoohan detested lateness. I did an interview with the music editor on The Prisoner called Eric Mivel, and he said, when McGoohan said, meet me at 3 o'clock, he meant 3 o'clock. And he was always very, if anybody was late. So he tends to put his own personality into some of these Columbos,
I'll add to that. In the Columbo episode, Identity Crisis, McGoohan plays a man who invents another personality, a dark side, to his colleagues. McGoohan is the only person who can deal with the mysterious Steinmetz. In a scene in a fairground wearing a Chimes of Big Ben type jacket, he says to the other character, played by Leslie Nielsen, remember the code we used in La Paz in 67, clickety-click, 66. Giving away a giant panda to a little girl, he has won at a shooting gallery, he tells her the name of the panda is Archibald. He allegedly wrote Once Upon a Time under the name Archibald Schwartz.
And of course, in that episode, there are several "be seeing yous."
Yeah, he keeps saying "be seeing you."
Yeah.
So Peter Falk obviously humoured him, and they were able to get these things in. Rafferty was a good attempt, but it didn't really get much critical reaction, and it was cancelled fairly early on.
Yeah, and also, of course, one thing we should definitely mention is about 1979, he made Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood, where he plays the prison warden. And there's a particularly good line in Alcatraz where McGoohan says, "We don't make good citizens, we make good prisoners."
Yeah, and
and I think, if I may, coming back to your question of why wasn't he a bigger star, because I don't know that he wanted to be a star. He wanted to be an actor, and he chose roles that he felt, tested him, drew elements of him out. He wasn't interested in the big star machine. That wasn't for him. And this is why he's not so well known, because he chose roles that he felt were challenging and were roles that he really wanted to do.
And did he? I think Max had mentioned some stage. Did he do more stage than as he got older? Stage work? No.
He tended to do less, I think, didn't he?
Now, I think he did. There was wasn't a spy thing he did on the stage. Did he go to New York? I'm just trying to recall this. He did something about a spy which was set in the 50s. I can't remember the name of it. It'll probably come to me after we finish. I think he did do some acting in New York briefly. I think it was called A Pack of Lies.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what it was called. It was called A Pack of Lies, and I think he was actually on stage for that, I think. Yeah.
Now
but mainly he was appearing in films with people like Clint Eastwood and various other people.
Yeah, you mentioned Alcatraz, and I know I read some essay online where someone said that there were a number of films where he sort of tweaked the number 6, and he couldn't get out of the sort of number 6 John Drake kind of shadow. Because I just looking here at his filmography, I see The Man in the Iron Mask, which is another prisoner show, a prisoner theme. Escape from Alcatraz. I don't know what he played in Scanners. It's been years since I saw that.
Yeah, he played a scientist in Scanners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had Braveheart, where he plays a king. Does the king die?
Yeah, King Edward I, that's right.
He dies in that film, doesn't he?
Yes, he does at the end. Yeah, he does. That's right. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering. Would you agree with that? Because like I've seen this a few times that he kept coming back to this motif of, say, if not the prison, the man against society, the individual against the masses.
I would totally agree with that. That was something that was very important to him. It ran in his DNA.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's end this segment, and now we'll get on to, in our next segment, Patrick McGoohan, his death and his legacy, and the things that came after Prisoner. So we'll end right here. All right, Dave, earlier in this interview, in one of our downtimes, we were talking about the influence of the Prisoner and McGoohan in the business, and you had mentioned a couple of shows that came earlier. One was a Western, and I forget what the second show was. Why don't we start off and just tell me a little bit about those two shows that you mentioned and how they may relate to the McGoohan phenomenon, if we call it that.
You'll have guessed by now, I think, that I don't like moving wallpaper, bubblegum for the mind, TV. You people made a really good Western series in 1960 called Outlaws with Barton McLean and Don Collier. What was so unusual was that each week it told the story from the outlaws' point of view. So it was incredibly sympathetic to the outlaw. Well, over here, I don't know about you folks back there, but over here the series was pulled. There was outrage in the press because it was sending out the wrong message. It showed why people became criminals, but it was brilliant and ahead of its time. Meanwhile, our contribution was a series called The Strange World of Gurney Slade, And this starred Anthony Newley, a 6-part black and white series from 1960, scripted by Sid Green and Dick Hills. We have a village in the UK called Gurney Stade, and Newley was driving through, and he got this idea in his mind. And what it set out to do was to do exactly what the prisoner did, which was to make people think. It starts off in the first episode with what you think is your average soap-type sitcom. And then the leading character, Anthony Newley, walks towards the camera, breaks the fourth wall, and walks out. And it's what happens to him, his adventures. And I'll give you a couple of examples. In one episode, he's put on trial for wasting the viewing audience's time. In another episode, all the characters say, "We don't know who we are, you'll have to help us, because the only bit of our life we know about is the bit that we relay here. What do we do in real life?" So it's kind of things like that that are adventurous and push the boundaries, and they say to the audience, you know, just sit up and think about this. This is something that's a bit different. And that's really, I suppose, what first drew me to, well, McGoohan's career, because he was doing things that were different. I subsequently saw something called Brand. Brand is an Ibsen play that McGoohan did on Hammersmith here at the theatre, and the BBC then did it in 1959. You can buy it on DVD. And they made a documentary about it, and the other actors said, "We've never seen acting like this," because Brand brings alive with such a degree of intensity. So, for what it's worth, we had at our convention this year Catherine McGoohan, who came over to talk about her father's legacy, and she said his career is bookended by, on the one hand, you've got Brand, and at the far end, you've got the Best of Friends, the Prisoner in the middle. So that's a kind of introduction to the sort of thing that that this is all about.
Yeah, I had mentioned that I had remembered seeing a show called Coronet Blue, and I just looked it up on Wikipedia. It was in 1967 here in the U.S. on CBS, and it ran from May 29 to September 4. It starred a fellow named Frank Converse, and it's interesting because I'm just looking up the plot details. Basically, it's a character who's called Gigot, who basically wakes up with amnesia. People are trying to kill him. The only words he remembers are Coronet Blue, and it says that the series creator later the show was canceled before we got the information how it plays out, but the biographer says the actual secret is that Converse was not really an American at all. He was a Russian who had been trained to appear like an American, was sent to the U.S. as a spy. He belonged to a spy unit called Coronet Blue. He decided to defect, so the Russians tried to kill him. So it seems almost like an opposite of Colony 3, and it's just interesting because that would have been I guess that would have been running at about the same time as The Prisoner. I don't remember it being as interesting as The Prisoner, but it's just interesting that that cultural zeitgeist had a show very similar in format. Let's talk about things that came though after, and we'll start with the remake in 2009 here in America, and your thoughts on that. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched it online. I think it was like a 7-hour miniseries or a 9-hour miniseries, and I probably watched 35 or 40% of it. And I saw the beginning and whatnot, and it's got good actors, and it's not poorly written, but it's not poorly acted, but the writing, it's just flat. It's like why the hell do you update this shit? Come on. What did you guys see that, and what was your thoughts?
Oh yes, we got it over here. I have to tell you that I've actually managed to find one person that liked it.
Yeah.
But no. You see, you can't remake a classic. It was an update. It was a reimagining. I watched it from beginning to end. I persevered. I know a lot of people gave up, but it just didn't hang together, and it was not gripping in any way at all. No, I didn't like it. What did you think, Max?
Yes, well, I watched most of it, but I didn't like it at all. I think it's best not to remake a classic. I don't really like the idea of remakes at all, and I certainly don't like the remake of The Prisoner. So I tend to put that to the back of my mind. Remakes generally are not successful. There are exceptions. I think the remake of The Fugitive, where you had Harrison Ford playing the Fugitive instead of David Janssen in the original series, I think The Fugitive remake was probably quite a good remake, but I think that's the exception to the rule. Most remakes are no good, and I think we should just concentrate on the original one from 1966-67. That's the one I like to think about.
Yeah, now I wanted to talk about another show that came on in the mid-90s, and from Dave's reaction when I mentioned it, I don't think he thought much of that. I thought it was a pretty good show called Nowhere Man that was starred a Canadian actor named Bruce Greenwood, and it was basically it was sort of a little bit like that Coronet Blue in that it's sort of an inversion of The Prisoner, where this guy who seems to be a photojournalist goes to the bathroom at a restaurant, comes out, and his life is totally different. And there's this sort of shadow government in the U.S. that's trying to capture him and to get this photo that he took of a supposed execution. And instead of being a prisoner, he's constantly on the run, and they're trying to capture him, and he's trying to find out who he is. And there's actually there's an episode in there, I forget the name of it, that's sort of like Colony 3, and he becomes prisoner number 6 there. And it ran for 25 episodes and was canceled, but the ending was just not as deep and psychological. It had probably about 8 or 10 really great episodes, but overall it didn't work as nearly as well. Did either of you see that show?
I'm afraid I didn't see the Nowhere Man. I have read what you've written about it, so I'm sort of familiar with the reading here, but yeah. I haven't actually seen the series on the television. Have you seen it, Dave?
No, I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's been screened over here.
Yeah, I know you can get DVDs here in America, but if you get a chance, it's interesting. Bruce Greenwood is an excellent actor. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He was in a film about JFK, and he was in a. He's quite a good actor. But another thing I wanted to talk about the legacy, and I don't know if you guys, as a kid growing up, I was into hard rock, heavy metal music. The British band Iron Maiden did 2 songs based on The Prisoner. One called The Prisoner, where they used the "I am a free man," not "oh, I am a number," not a free, that thing, and then also a song called "Back in the Village." And so I don't know, do you guys have anyone ever play those songs at the conventions or anything?
Oh gosh, what do we do? I mean, this is
because I know Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer of Iron Maiden, is a huge fan of McGoohan.
I have to tell you at this point, I met Bruce Dickinson. Okay, yeah. I was at a do. It was I think a book launch of something about The Prisoner, and we were in Soho, London. And there were 40 or 50 people invited, and I happened to be wearing a Prisoner jacket. So this guy comes over to me and strikes up a conversation with me, you see, and we're talking about The Prisoner and how much we like it. And we have a good chat, and he says, "Look, I really like your jacket." He said, "I'm going to an event. Could I borrow it?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can." He said, "Oh, I better introduce myself. My name's Bruce Dickinson." I said, "How do you do? Very, very pleased to meet you." I didn't know who he was. I don't follow popular music. I had no idea. Well, I do know that I gave him my jacket, and he returned it afterwards with a very nice note. So, I mean, what we tend to do is, The Prisoner's gone out into popular culture. They made TV programs. We've got a chap here called Jules Holland, and he did a program called The Laughing Prisoner, set in Port Merion with bands. Other bands have paid tributes to it, because I'm not interested in popular music. I can't tell you who they are, but I can tell you when we have our conventions, the wrap-up party on a Sunday night very often features a band that does play prisoner-related music.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think if I remember right, many years ago, there was a group called, I think was it Dr. Feelgood?
Yes.
And they did an album called Be Seeing You. Oh. I think they were wearing prisoner blazers on the cover.
Yeah.
But my favourite song is actually the one called I Helped Patrick McGoohan Escape. which was written and performed by a person called Eddie Ball, who had a pop group called The Times.
Oh, yeah.
And we had Eddie Ball to our convention many years ago, and we actually filmed a little video in Portmeirion to accompany the song. So if you ever get a chance to listen to that one, I Help Patrick McGoohan Escape by The Times. That's a good song.
It may be on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, let me just end this segment. You mentioned you met Bruce Dickinson. I assume that both of you may have met Patrick McGoohan. Can you give any anecdotes about him? Either one of you, your favorite one.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go first, Max.
Okay, well, I met Patrick McGoohan in October 1982. It was at that interview I mentioned earlier on about Central Television in Birmingham in the UK. They did an interview. Mike Smith interviewed Patrick McGoohan, and he talked about the prisoner. We had about 30 of our members of 6 of 1 at the event, including Dave and various other people. So I actually did get to meet him briefly, and he did about a 5 or 10 minute interview and talked about the prisoner. And he particularly mentioned about the reaction to the ending, as Dave mentioned earlier, about how he had to go and escape. He and his family had to go and hide in the hills in Wales, in the UK, to get away from all the crowds who were hammering on his door at home in London. So I did meet him once, so that was, 32 years ago. And so it was very nice. I can actually say I've met him and I've shaken hands with him. And I also met his daughter, of course, Catherine, when she came to our convention last April.
Oh, okay. How about you, Dave?
Okay. You may think this a bit odd, Dan.
Yeah.
I knew that Patrick McGoohan was a very private man and a very shy man, as indeed many actors are. So at this event, where Patrick came up to Birmingham, that Max has just spoken about, I had the opportunity to meet him. But being aware that he was shy and he was very, very private, I chose not to meet him because I was aware that he would be surrounded by so many people who were in awe of him that he would feel almost naked, is the way that I would express it. So I actually chose not to meet him. And I related this story all these years later when Catherine came over to the convention, and I had the opportunity really to spend the whole weekend talking with Catherine about her father and what he meant to me and to her and what he's done for so many people. And I think at the point I said that I chose not to meet him, she gave quite a knowing smile.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I think there's a Canadian YouTube video where he, in the mid-'80s, where he talks about being sick of people being sycophantic and in awe of him. And that's right around that.
Warner Troyer. Warner Troyer interviewed him in Canada. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right. And there are. I mean, in a sense, I rest my case. I know it sounds a bit strange, but I have been on the receiving end of people being sycophantic towards me. And I have to tell you, it's an awful thing. It is so embarrassing, because what you really want to do is you want to treat everybody just as you would treat everybody, well, not be in awe of someone. To be a huge star in some way must be very, very difficult. I was once in a restaurant in a town, and I happened to be wearing a rather nice suit with a green buttonhole, and I looked quite smart with a green tie. And in those days, I looked a bit like Elton John. And a lady came up to me and she said, "I hope you don't mind, but I know who you are. Could I have your autograph?" And I thought, what? And I said, "I'm sorry, who do you think I am?" She said, "Oh, no, I can't say, but I know who you are, and you're here in disguise." I said, No, I don't know. No, honestly, I'm not. The more I tried to convince her I wasn't Elton John, the more convinced she became. And it was sickly sweet. I don't want people to be like that to me. Yeah. And I reckon all these stars, it must be very, very difficult to cope with people who are fawning over you.
You should have said to that person, "No, my name is Reg Dwight."
Oh.
All right, let's end this segment. In our next segment, we will talk about the society a bit more in depth and what you've got coming up this year at your convention at Port Merion, and we could give out some links and stuff for people who want to connect and join the society. So that'll be coming up next. And we are back with Dave Barry and Max Horer from 6 of 1, the Prisoner Appreciation Society. Dave is the founder of the society, and Max is the founder of a prisoner shop in Port Merion where the series The Prisoner was filmed. So let us talk, Dave, about 6 of 1. We did mention a little bit of how it was founded. Let's talk about the society. Let's give out the way for people to contact you, the website, what any annual dues or anything are, and what you've got at this year's convention in Port Merion. So Dave, take it away.
Okay. I guess 6 of 1 membership has obviously fluctuated throughout the years. We arrived at the name 6 of 1 because we wanted something that was ambiguous as the series. And I earlier mentioned Roger Goodman and Judy Adamson that was so important in setting up the society. And I remember on the 6th of January 1977, Roger and I were sat in a car talking about what we were going to do and how the society was going to function. And to this day, he maintained that I thought of the name 6 of 1, and I maintain that he thought of the name 6 of 1. And the society has grown through the years. It's we had 3,000 or 4,000 members. We probably had over 70,000 members come through the doors. We publish a magazine a number of times a year, and this is the most recent one. There on the back is Catherine McGoohan. Can you see that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's at our convention last year. And the magazine contains a wealth of articles, philosophical articles, interviews, anything that you would imagine that people want to write in about. So it continues to be an inexhaustible source of prisoner information. The jewel in the crown is, of course, our annual convention that we hold in Port Merion. I mean, Port Merion are great. We have to thank Port Merion for letting us do this. They allow us to take over the village every year, and we go and we turn Port Merion into the village. There's a human chess game. There's a free-for-all reenactment of the mini-mopes going down with the election speeches. I do a guided tour to tell people all about Port Merion and how it began, and Sir Clough Williams-Ellis, who I met in 1977 and said that he thought the prisoner showed Port Merion off to its best advantage. There's a touring theatre of reenactments. There's original things that are put on in the town hall, as it's called. For example, we might have plays put on that are all prisoner inspired. It's where the guest each year is interviewed, and I said last year it was Catherine. This coming year, it's the actor Darren Nesbitt, who so wonderfully played with great humour number 2 in It's Your Funeral.
That's the number 2 that wanted to assassinate the other number 2, right?
That's right. Blonde hair,
yeah.
Very decadent looking, wonderful sense of humour. And I have the pleasure of being the interviewer, and I try and talk the actor through all their memories and their interests and everything else and what they've appeared in, and that of course is recorded. So we do many different things at the convention. It's a great opportunity to socialise as well, so members can get to meet each other. The Brain Bash that I mentioned earlier is now part of the Port Merion convention. Each year I get up and it's going to be a different topic. What's your favourite episode and why? What do you think the meaning of this episode is? What's your favourite scene and why? Or sometimes I may talk about Alexis Canner, for example, all sorts of things. So we get all those. Do you want to add anything into what we do at a convention?
Yes. Also, of course, just before we do that, I should just say something about 6 of 1 that Dave mentioned earlier. Of course, 6 of 1 is a quote from a couple of prisoner episodes. You see, so that's another good reason for calling the society 6 of 1. Well, George Baker says 6 of 1, half a dozen of another in Arrival. And Patrick McGoohan himself says 6 of 1 in the prequel. So another good reason for calling the society 6 of 1. But yes, certainly as far as conventions are concerned, as Dave mentioned, we had the first one in '77, which was just a one-day event. But ever since then, it's been a whole weekend. So obviously, as long as the weather's kind to us, we can pack a whole lot in to a whole weekend. And the guests actually have been very good. We've got a particular member called Ian French, who's very good at driving guests to Port Marion from usually from the London area. So we sort of offer a chauffeur service for our guests.
And
so,
is it open to all just members, or can other people? I mean, can you not be a member and go and just pay?
You can be a non-member and go into Port Marion and look around and watch the human chess game and things like that. But it's members only for anything that's an indoor activity. The reason for this, of course, is that there has to be in a sense, an exclusivity, but we have to pay for all the things to happen.
Yeah.
You have to pay for the guests. I mean, flying Catherine McGoohan over from Los Angeles isn't a cheap thing, and somehow that money's got to be found.
That's right. All the members have to pay a registration fee to attend the convention, and of course, there's only limited space in the town hall anyway. The town hall can only accommodate a certain number of people, so we have to make sure that the indoor events are just members only. Yeah.
And
it's also worth saying how much Port Marion cherish the prisoner connection, because approximately 50% of people who go there because they've seen the prisoner. And indeed, there are village signs in the village and on your way out, as you go out, in the same Albertus typeface as the prisoner used. And the very last one says, "He's seeing you with a canopied penny farthing." So Port Marion really do like the prisoner.
And we also have the rover balloons bouncing around the village. Of course. I mentioned earlier on in the interview about rovers, and of course I should have said at that time that of course the rover balloon was the second choice for the village guard, because the original choice for the village guard was not a balloon, it was a machine, a sort of go-kart with a black and white covering and a blue flashing light on the top. So the original rover actually was a machine which sort of zoomed about the village, a motorized machine, but that was a failure. It just didn't work at all, and it was too noisy. So that's why they brought in the weather balloon, which turned out to be much better in the end. So at conventions, we have plenty of balloons bouncing around.
Yeah, it's a little bit of fortuity. Over the years with the conventions, where have some of the people who come from? I mean, do you have people that have come from New Zealand or South America? Or?
Yeah, an average convention. There'll always be new people and old timers. Inevitably, they come from Europe. There's a contingent of about 12 that come from Germany every year. Inevitably, they come from America and Canada, but we have them from the year before last from Israel and from Argentina, Australia, New Zealand. They literally do come from all over the place to come and experience this piece of magic themselves, what the village is actually like. I did once. There's one of our members is a university lecturer at a university in Indiana, and she runs the prisoner there as part of her course. And one year she brought over the whole class of students that experienced the Port Marion magic.
And also I should mention our American organizer, Bruce Clark. He came to 3 conventions in a row, 1985, 1986, 1987, and he's very active in America helping the society over there. So I'd like to say thank you to Bruce Clark for all he does.
And give out the main URL, the website for you guys. We'll have it in the link underneath the video. We'll have it, but
it is www.6of1 spelt in letters SIXOFONE.co.uk.
Okay. And so we'll wrap this episode up. And well, before I do, I was just googling around, and I just want to go back to the legacy. I also
Oh,
what did you fellows think about? I've seen that there were actually some comic books and also books written based on the prisoner. And also, earlier today I'd seen that there may have been some radio dramas based on the prisoner that may be coming up this year. Have you heard anything about that?
Before you do that, Dave's just got a correction for you.
Oh, okay.
sorry, Dan. Website. Forget the UK. It's www.sixof1.co. Apologies.
Okay. But
Okay.
let me just, before we end this, the other things like the comic books or books, what did you guys think of that? And do you know, because I had looked and seen that there seems to be that there may be some radio dramas based on the prisoner. Have you heard of anything of that?
Well, I'll just say a bit about the books. Yeah, I mean, of course, in the late 60s, there were three books produced. One was by Thomas Dish, another was by Hank Stein, and the third one was by David McDaniel. Those were sort of prisoner books loosely based on the series, which were around in sort of 68, 69, 70, around about that time. And of course, they've been reprinted since. I have read them all, but I'm not particularly keen on any of them. I think they sort of deviate from the actual TV series, and I'm not a great fan of those, although some people like them. Now, there were, I think, DC Comics. They did a sort of comic book series on the prisoner many years ago. I'm not familiar with these radio drama things. I'm not sure if you know about that, Dave.
No, I haven't heard of these. Are they something that's happening stateside?
I tried looking it up again and I couldn't find it, but I think I saw that earlier this morning. Maybe I was mistaken, but I think it was supposedly in the UK. But anyway, let's wrap up this segment and we'll end the interview, and I'll give both of you closing remarks about either the society or about McGoohan or the shows, and we'll do that in just a moment. All right, we're going
Well,
to end this interview. In the break, Debs McDougall, whose home we are recording from, who's one of the convention coordinators for Six of One, just told me that there was some. I was correct and not correct. Apparently, the Doctor Who folks do some radio dramas, and apparently in the UK here, there's going to be some. They've been licensed, I guess, to do some dramas based upon the prisoner. So that cleared that up. Let's just end with giving Dave and Max a final say on whatever they want on the topic at hand. So Dave, since you started the society, the floor is yours.
well, as you may have guessed, having started it, and still here. It is something I'm very, very passionate about. It captured the zeitgeist. It captured the mood of the moment back in the 1960s, but it does say so much. Over here, we have a radio program called Desert Island Discs, where each week someone pretends they're marooned on a desert island and they get some music to take with them. Also, the choice of a luxury. Well, I always think if I was marooned on a desert island, I would take all the output, all the written output of our society's material, because there's endless things to go at there, whether it's the interviews with people associated with the series, or there's original articles, or members, people who said, they found this series and are so pleased that they've met other like minds. And several people have said how they've used it as a tool for personal growth. Well, being marooned on a desert island, you would really want something that would feed the brain and stimulate the mind. And there's just this huge wealth of interesting material that one could go over again and again. And in essence, the prisoner I think it's what Patrick McGoohan wanted. He wanted it to be a tool for personal growth, and for each of us to be able to ask these or answer these questions that were being asked. So I know right until my dying day, the prisoner influence ripples out into the world. It still influences people. People still remember it. People still discover it. It's something that will resonate on and on. And in my mind, it has been a very, very important stepping stone. And I continue to think of it and its implications every day. Thank you.
Max?
Be seeing you.
Okay, yeah, well, obviously, it was a very much ahead of its time. The Prisoner was very forward-looking, and it certainly stood the test of time. It was a very good idea to make it in color, of course. As Dave mentioned earlier, when we first saw The Prisoner in the 60s, we only saw it on black and white television sets. But of course, when it was re-screened in the 70s, we were seeing it for the first time in color, and that really did make all the difference. Making The Prisoner in color was a very good idea because, of course, one of the main things about Portmeirion is the color of the place, how bright and cheerful and colorful it is. And in a way, that adds so much to The Prisoner, because the whole idea in The Prisoner that although it's very colourful and very sort of apparently happy on the surface in the village, it's actually rather sinister beneath the surface, you know, where you've got the underground control rooms and number two's office and everything. So you have this idea in The Prisoner of sort of happy and colourful on the surface and the sinister goings on beneath the surface. So I'd like to say that, and also I'd like to say that we've managed to keep the society going for 38 years now. We just had our 38th birthday 4 days ago on the 6th of January. So I think that says something about The Prisoner, that it must be something special that we've managed to keep the society going for 38 years.
And I thought I was going to meet half a dozen people in a pub somewhere, and that would really be it.
And 38 years later, here we are.
For you, Max, Max, tell me, tell Dan, tell the viewers. I've said how The Prisoner, and I'm passionate about it, and it's touched me at a very deep level. How about you?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's all about you are a prisoner of yourself, as I said earlier. I mean, basically, I sometimes wish I were somewhere else and somebody else, but I can't be. I'm always going to be me. So in a way, The Prisoner is all about recognizing that you are yourself and you are a prisoner of your own memories and your own experiences, and you can't escape until you die. So basically, The Prisoner is just what Patrick McGoohan said it was. It's about being a prisoner of one's own mind. But, you know, that's the deep side of it. You know, the happy side of it is Portmeirion. And again, I'd like to say thank you very much to Clough Williams for creating Portmeirion.
The happy side is our continual search for ourselves.
Absolutely. We're always looking to find ourselves and hopefully to improve ourselves. Thank you very much. Keep doing it.
Well, I just want to end by saying thank you to both of you for speaking of it, and I think whether people watch this in 5, 10, 50, or 500 years when they're circling around some planet in a different star system, I know McGoohan himself was very wary about technology, but I think the internet, for all of its ceaseless pornography and Nigerian scams for money and whatnot. One of the reasons I started this interview series was to get talks about works of art and ideas like this out here, and I think this has been a very productive meeting. And even if you're watching this decades after all of us are dust, there will still be these shows that you can pop in, or whatever medium evolves, that you'll be able to watch, and it'll still be as relevant as something written back in classical Greek society. And so again, I want to thank both of you, and anyone who wants to watch any more of these videos, please do, because I think we'll have a lot more stimulating discussions in a few weeks. As example, there was a famous comic book called Watchmen, and I'm not a comic book aficionado, but I recently read it and wrote a sort of negative critique of the whole genre, and I'll be debating with a couple of people about that in a few weeks, so that should be also interesting. So again, thank you to Dave Barry, thank you to Max Horror from 6 of 1, and I will be seeing you as well.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Seeing you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.